Hi, everyone. Welcome to another session of this year's GSE UK Virtual Conference. This is session 9N. With us, we've got Mark Hostler from IBM, and he will be talking about explore the latest offerings and developments with IBM Z trial. Now, before I let Mark start his presentation, just to let you know how the Q&A will work. So throughout the presentation, you will be able to ask any questions. However, that is limited to you having to write them in the meeting chat box. And this is to avoid background noises if you accidentally unmute yourselves. So again, throughout the presentation, write your questions in the meeting chat box, and one of the hosts will ask the question to Mark. At the back end, once Mark finishes, we will allow you and enable you to unmute yourselves, and you can speak and ask the questions if you have any further questions to Mark. So hopefully everyone is okay with that. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Rui. Okay, so yeah, as Rui said, I'm Mark Hostler. I'm the product manager for IBM Z trial, and I'll be talking today about Z trial and what it is and how it's used, and then also talking about how IBM is further developing this idea of delivering these virtual ZOS systems through various channels to help enable our users, our customers, people for education, and so on and so forth. So my email's there on the first slide if you want to get in contact with me, but and these slides are obviously on the GSE website. But yeah, we'll get started. To start with, there's a bit of a question, which is how did people get access to Z software? When I joined IBM, which was some time ago now, about 8 years ago, the first thing that my manager then did was hand me a little key for a ZD&T and told me to go and install it and try and stand up a kit region, which was an interesting challenge, given that I hadn't had any exposure to ZOS before. And in actual fact, I found it very, very quickly that if I didn't have that ZD&T key and a red book in front of me, I would have found it very, very difficult to understand ZOS and learn about it in a meaningful way. And in actual fact, that expands across a much broader scope of applications. Our customers do struggle to get access to environments where they can try ZOS software and experience ZOS software without having to work on their own mainframes, which for obvious reasons a lot of customers are reluctant to do. So we were sort of tasked to put together a system where our users could get access to these things in these 4 areas. Understanding the features of a product is difficult if the product is new and has new features that aren't just developments of existing ones. Mainframe users, when we're trying to grow the Z skills pool, as you know, ZOS is still a huge part of IBM's business and is continuing to grow. So educating the new users is a huge challenge. Introducing new professionals to Z software is difficult not only for IBM but for our customers as well. It does take a significant amount of time, resource, effort to skill up new professionals in the mainframe business, and the resources that were out there were fairly limited. And finally, the areas of development of software have traditionally in IBM been not well supported, I think is the best way to say it. We have beta programs, we have early experience programs, we have the design partnerships where we engage customers to talk about the new developments in software, but we don't really have much of a way, or rather we didn't have much of a way for those customers to get hands-on with pre-GA code other than downloading and installing it on their own mainframe, which again is time consuming, is difficult. So that's our that was our task essentially to address these issues using IBM cloud infrastructure, and that is essentially what we've done. IBM Z Trial is the solution that we've come up with and that we are pushing. It was originally designed to introduce customers to ZOS Connect when it was when ZOS Connect was first released. And subsequently, we've then grown it fairly substantially across a large number of the products within the IBM Z stack. It's built on these three principles on the right-hand side. The first is that it's no charge. That is, we don't charge any of our users to access the Z trials, and we're intending never to change that. There's no need to download and install these products. This is all done virtually through a web browser or via remote desktop, and we're intending again to try and keep that principle all the way into the future. We don't want people to have to download and install this stuff on their own site. And finally, which is a bit of a challenging one, the accessible and useful to everyone, is the Z trials themselves are designed very carefully by us and with our IBM designers to make sure that they are not only applicable to advanced users who can go in and explore the software and explore its capabilities, but also to newer users who need to be introduced to this and explained the processes that they're going through while working in these environments. So just to give you an idea of how a Z trial works, what we have is a system where a user comes in and submits a request, and we have this on the Z trial website. The Z trials are also linked from the product pages in IBM. So if you go to a particular product, so say ZOS Connect or ADDI or whatever it might be, if that product has a Z trial, then that will be on that page as well. And we're also putting all of the trials into IBM TechZone, which will be the repository for all demos in IBM in the future. But the trials are already linked in there. And when you submit a request, all you require is an email address. We allow users to sign up for an IBM ID via our page. You don't have to do it separately. If you already have an IBM ID, you just log in using that. And once you've submitted that request, that goes to our Z trial provisioning backend. This is all automated. It requires no input from us whatsoever. What that provisioning backend does is it takes the information from your IBM ID, that is your email address and your location, so depending on where in the world you are, and it will start off our cloud provisioning system. It will choose the nearest data center to you. So if you're in the UK, then it's London. There's another 5 around Europe. There's several in Asia. There's several in South America, North America, and Australasia. And that is to reduce the latency, to make sure that the experience of using the trial is slicker and quicker. And that asset is then provisioned, and that usually takes less than 1 hour, but we put a maximum on it of 2 hours, because now, whereas originally the Z trials, all of the Z trials were fairly simple in configuration, we do have some now that are a bit more complicated, that take a little bit longer to provision. And when we talk about an asset, that is what we describe as a single Z trial. And within that, most of the Z trials are built on this infrastructure at the bottom. That is, we have a virtual Windows machine on the front end, and that is configured with all of the software that you need to interact with the ZOS system. So most of them will have both ZOS Explorer, but also will have things like ZOSMF, a 3270 terminal. All of them have 3270 terminals for those users who want to use that and explore the ZOS that way, like me, for example. And the Windows machine also contains our Z Trial Wizard, which is an Eclipse application that will guide you through the process of using the software, and essentially is designed to demonstrate kind of a real world situation. And that Windows is connected to a Linux VM on the back end, which is running ZD&T, which is an emulated ZOS. And that is the ZOS that you're interacting with. Now, every single Z trial is completely independent. You have your own ZOS system, so you can go in and muck around with it and break it, and it won't affect anybody else, which is nice. And almost all of the Z trials follow this format. There are exceptions to that based on the fact that now we are pushing quite hard on things like hybrid cloud and Z's place in that infrastructure. And so there are newer Z trials that are coming out now with other resources connected into that. So we have some which are running OpenShift, for example, other ones with applications that are running specifically on another Linux machine. We also have trials that are running on, as opposed to these sort of x86 Linux backends, we have a couple of assets that are running on real Z hardware. Those are the ones that require things like AI workloads, the Z managed portfolio that needs to show kind of work throughput and things like that. Once that asset is provisioned and set up, it's all networked and all ready to roll. And that's then delivered to you via an email. You basically just get a link, you click on it, and you can get straight into the Z trial via a browser. You'll drop in on a Windows front end, and then it's all yours. The Z trials are provisioned for 3 days as standard, and that's usually enough time to work through the scenarios that are in there. But we also send, we also ask users to request extensions if they need them. A lot of kind of more advanced users don't need to use the scenarios that we've put in there. They just want to get in and play with the ZOS with that software pre-configured. That's absolutely fine, and you're perfectly welcome to do that. And we appreciate that the 3 days might not be long enough for that. So we allow extensions as well if you request them from the Z trial team. What I'll do a bit later on in the presentation is talk about the resources that are available for people who want to do this kind of at a larger scale or for longer periods of time, because we now have a separate system in order to service those sort of requests. Just to talk a little bit more about the principles behind Z trial and a little bit more information from a business perspective. We know that in order for this to be successful, we have to stick to those principles. The first one, as I say, is that we do not charge our end users. The Z trial department is funded by the top level of IBM Z in order to support, essentially support sales, obviously the main principle. But what that gives us is a large amount of white space in which to operate. So as long as we are contributing to IBM Tech sales and making sure we support those, it means that we can support lots of other things without struggling to justify the expense to IBM. So the customer's understanding the benefits of new software is the original principle of this, and that's great. But in actual fact, we're also very, very keen on making sure that the Z skills pool grows, that customers are able to educate and enable their own users on Z software. We want people to be able to come in and muck around with ZOS systems and break them in order to understand much better how working on ZOS works. And getting feedback on the Z software is always been a challenge for IBM, and this is a good way for us to engage a broader scope of audience. It makes it much easier for the users to come in and try the software and provide that feedback to us, which previously would have been a fairly arduous process. The second one, which is I think probably the real USP of Z trial and ZVA, which is our other offering, is that without having to download and install things, the sort of last mile delivery for these ZOS systems has kind of been solved. We have the catalog available, as I say, on the Z trials page. They're all linked from the product pages. They're all linked from TechZone. What we're trying to do is make sure that we maintain the individual trial pages at specific static links, so that even external users can include these in education. They can include them in their own resources. They can include them in their own events if they want to run events and have lots of users sign up for the Z trials at the same time. And we're trying more and more to publicize these trials across a much broader range. We try and go to every conference we reasonably can and give out as many of the systems as we can so that people can play around them and understand how they work. And we want people to go and spread the word of this, because we definitely don't want to keep it a secret. We have 20 trials available at the moment. We have 4 more in development. And for the most part, we work very hard to keep the trials updated. So as new features of existing products come out, as new ZOS distributions are released, we try very hard to make sure that the Z trials are still up to date. Once you've obviously signed up for a Z trial, you get that URL link and you can access it straight away. And as I say, it's then available for 3 days, but you can extend that. You are able to take out 2 trials at a time. You can take them out as many times as you like, and we encourage you to do so. So if you take out a trial and you want to do more work on that product, you can just take another trial. When that one expires, you can keep doing that as much as you like, and we don't place any restrictions on how many times a user can take the trials, or at what scale, or whether or not they want to encourage people from their own organization. We want as many people to take these things as possible, so long as they are useful. And we have the guided scenarios within there for the users to work through. A lot of the work that goes into developing each individual trial is focused around those scenarios. We work with both the product team for each product in Z trial, but also the designers, to make sure that those scenarios reflect the sort of real world use cases for that product, so that the users get a good understanding of how it works in a proper mainframe environment and how to do the key things. The ZOS Connect trial, for example, is the one that I tend to talk about, because it's the one we tend to encourage people to use first if they've never done this before. The guided user interface, we'll just talk about that a little bit more. The Z trial, most of them are built around 3 scenarios. Quite a lot of them have got more than that. And those scenarios are designed to last anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes. And the wizard guides the user through. To give you an idea of sort of what those are, in the ZOS Connect trial, what we have is scenarios to create REST APIs for CICS programs, IMS transactions, DB2 for ZOS data, and IBM MQ queues, and then call a REST API from a COBOL application. You can work through those scenarios. You can pick the ones that are relevant to you and ignore the ones that aren't. And as I said before, you are then very welcome to just go in and muck around on the ZOS as much as you like, because if you can go in and break it, that's a good way, I think, of learning a product once you've got a basic understanding of how it works. There is some difference from trial to trial on that, obviously, based on the products that you use to access the ZOS. So, as I say, there are so many that are ZOS Explorer. There are some that, as you can see, go through a 3270. Zoe goes into Zoe Desktop, and the ZOSMF trials again are through ZOSMF through the browser. So there's an awful lot to explore within the Z trials, even once you've done the scenarios. That environment is entirely yours and doesn't affect anywhere else. So you're very welcome to just break it. The trials are provisioned worldwide, as I said, and that's to reduce the latency. And generally speaking, the experience of using these virtual systems we've found is pretty good compared to a lot of other virtual environments that are available. To give you an idea of the scale of this, we provisioned about 10,000 trials in 2022. We're actually most likely to increase that significantly in 2023. There's an awful lot of demand for this. The new products that we're bringing into Z trial generate a lot of interest, and we want to continue that throughout the rest of the year. So we're continuing to scale up, I think, is the headline there. We've got a lot of work to do, we know, on engaging users in IBM Z, but Z Trial and my team, and we're working a lot with the various engagement teams across IBM to make sure that these are more broadly available. We're working quite hard with IBM Z advocacy groups, so the Z Federated Advocates, the Z Champions, the Education and Master the Mainframe group are all wired in with Z Trial or Z Virtual Access assets, and those are delivered continuously throughout the year for lots and lots of education. What we want to do in 2023 is start to engage more customers directly for that. We've started to see this year that customers are coming in, engaging with IBMers and saying, you know, we've got, you know, IBM software running on our mainframes, but we want to enable our users. And so what we're trying to do is make it easier for customers to come in and get these large classrooms full of environments for free, so that they can skill up their own users. The conferences, as I say, we're trying to get to as many of those this year as we can. One of the things we like to do at conferences is, instead of giving people access to the Z Trial, we'll provision ourselves 100 or so of these instances that last longer than the 3 days and hand them out to people for the duration of the conference, so that they can work on them, play on them, you know, go through those exercises in their own time, and actually extend them beyond the length of the conference so that people have access to them afterwards as well. As I say, with the education point as well, there's a lot of work going on this year to engage our external customers and business partners to make sure that they're getting access to these resources as well as just the IBMers. If we can get our customers to be using these at scale as well, then we're going to find it, I think we're going to find it a lot easier to engage people across these conferences. And the community is working with the Z advocacy groups and engagement groups to bring these things to newer audiences. So there's a lot of work going to engage universities, for example, but the other side of this is that we know that there's lots of areas online, and there's an awful lot of our customers and business partners who have their own education programs for these things. And if we can make this available to them, then that's going to grow that Z skills pool far easier than we would be able to do on our own. Just to talk about, well, the next few slides are about what we are doing now and what we're going to do throughout 2023 and beyond. For Z Trial, there's a lot of focus on larger, wider format trials, I think is the best way to describe it, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But now we've grown quite a lot. We have access to a lot more in terms of resources to develop the trials further. As I say, we now have the OpenShift capability, so the trials will include OpenShift clusters. We have the ability to use proper ZOS hardware on the back end, which lets us use those AI workloads and Z-manage portfolio and expose those. We can have much broader format assets that people can access that kind of showcase a full hybrid cloud environment that we haven't been able to do before. And hopefully this year there'll be more of a focus on the large sort of sandbox trials, which is that will deliver these environments not only with our guided scenarios, but with more guidance on using them freeform. So allowing users to sort of do their own work on these environments and engage and test their own applications and things. We've got a lot of collaboration going on within IBM in pre-GA this year as well. There's going to be a lot of focus on making sure that the trials that we put out aren't just reflecting the current state of a product, but also exposing users to the pre-GA code for that product before it's released, both to allow users to understand what is coming, but also to get their feedback. The KICS Design Partner Program has been a huge success in IBM, where we've engaged customers and got an understanding of what they want to see in the next release of KICS, understand you know, what their needs and wants are. But actually, if we can expose them to that code way ahead of the release time, then it makes that feedback program much more valuable and much easier for the customers as well. So our first pre-GA assets are available now through those design partner programs. We've got both Kix and DB2 have released pre-GA assets through Z Trial, and we're aiming to hopefully get 2 or 3 more this year. And those are the other big difference with those is the regularity with which they're updated. The Z trials are updated fairly regularly, but the pre-GA assets will be updated on an almost monthly basis as new beta code and new beta drops are released. So that's a big focus. How you get access to Z Trial, you go to the Z Trial landing page. As I say, you can get there through the product pages, you can get there through TechZone as well. Once you request a trial, you will get a confirmation email saying that we've received your request, and that kicks off the provisioning. You'll then be delivered it usually within an hour. It can take up to 2, as I say, for some of the more complex trials, but most of them will get to you within an hour. You then have a menu of the scenarios that we've built. All the trials, you can go through the scenarios in any order that you like, and you can pick the ones that are relevant to you and ignore the ones that aren't. Or you can go in and just play with the software yourself if you know what you're doing, and you know, you can go and muck about with it. These environments are independent, and you can have them. You can have as many of them as you like after one another, and it doesn't affect anyone else. And as I said before, we can extend them on request if you need more than the 3 days that we provision as standard. The other thing that we want to do is that we want to encourage people, as everyone does, to give feedback on these. We like to know what is good about the trials and what is bad about the trials, but also if there are areas of the Z software stack that we're not covering, if there are products, if there are experiences, if there are scenarios that you'd like to see that aren't in there, we like to hear that, because it's very easy for us to then go back to the product teams and say, there's demand for this, come and build it. And the product teams are very, very receptive to that. They like to know what the customers want to see in these trials and in these environments, so that they can engage their customers a bit more directly. To give you an idea of the other offering that we have available, we've started a second offering called Z Virtual Access, which is essentially the process by which we can give larger events access to this stuff. This is only accessible at the moment by IBMers. The intention is hopefully to expand that to customers and business partners at some point in 2023, although it will require a kind of validation process for the requests. But that is not to say that it's not available to customers and business partners. It's done through an IBMer. ZVA is basically an expanded version of Z Trial. Whereas Z Trial, you're requesting one instance for 3 days, ZVA allows us to provision out up to about 150 instances for far longer periods of time. That's why it's restricted to IBMers at the moment, just to make sure that you know, people are using it responsibly. But we know that the demand for using it in this way is there, and we want to support it within the white space that we've got as much as possible. What we want to encourage people to do is to reach out to the people, their contacts within IBM, reach out to me, reach out to the rest of the Z Trial team, reach out to tech sales, reach out to product managers if you want to engage them, and say, look, we have a requirement to either skill up or to enable or to educate at a large scale, and then get the IBMer to schedule and run one of these ZVA events with you and your customers and your users and whoever else it might be. And as far as we possibly can, we like to say yes to those requests. As I say, we're well aware of the demand for people to have access to these environments for longer periods of time, for larger numbers to be available. And so we try and service those requests as much as possible. The other difference within ZVA to Z Trial is that the entire Z Trial catalog is available through Z Virtual Access. But what we also have in Z Virtual Access is environments that are designed for two other use cases. One is a classroom. So we have environments that are designed to be run by an instructor. And we also have other environments that are designed for more like a sandbox environment where users can go in and experience a broader range of products. So we have a full kind of DevOps stack in there. I'll talk about that in a little bit. I've got an architecture diagram. Just to move on to the next one, this is the architecture diagram for one of our ZVA assets, our most complex ZVA asset, actually, to give you an idea of how this all works. We have the user accessing over a browser through a product called Thinfinity, which allows access through the firewall. And we have our secure cloud service that then connects it to the Windows desktop. That is in classic infrastructure in IBM Cloud, so that's provisioned near the user, the end user. That's then connected by a private network to the VPC on the back end, which is running all of the various components. So we have the ZOS sat in the middle, so that's our ZOS system. We also then have our OpenShift cluster at the top, running in Red Hat, running WASI dev spaces. And then at the bottom, we have this Ubuntu system, which is separate again, running GitLab, DBB, Artifactory, and GitLab, essentially to give a full kind of DevOps experience to the end user. And this is one of the ones that we have available in Z Virtual Access for those engagements. The Z Trial catalog, so this is what's currently available. Obviously this presentation is available through the GSE website, so you can access this and browse it at your leisure. But as you can see, we've got a fairly broad coverage of the Z product stack. We're intending to get a lot more in that machine learning and AI area this year, now that we have access to high performance backend, which we obviously didn't have before. But also we've got a lot of these current trials updating. So both Service Management Unite trials are being updated. Zoe's under an update at the moment. ADFC and ADDI are also under update. And most of the time we're adding new scenarios as well as the product levels as well. So the trials that have been out for a while are also updating as well as we're adding new ones. And as I say, we would love to hear from anyone if you've got products or experiences that aren't available at the moment. We want to hear what you would like to see, so that we can engage the right teams to deliver those as quickly as we can. With that should cover just about everything that needs to be covered on IBM Z Trial and IBM ZVA. Again, this is the session feedback, so obviously your feedback is much appreciated. And I'll just check whether or not we have any questions in the chat, but I don't think we do. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, you put them in the chat now, or if you have any questions in the future, you can reach out to me directly. I'll be happy to answer anything, any questions that you have. And if you have any requests, if you want more information on using Z Virtual Access through IBM, then please, as I say, don't hesitate to reach out to me directly, and we'll see what we can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. That was really interesting. I'm just going to check if we've got any questions. We don't have anything in the chat. I don't know if anybody has anything they'd like to say or ask, Mark. It doesn't look like there are any questions at the moment, Mark. So I think people will probably, they've taken down your email address and they'll probably get in touch.
Lovely.
Yeah. Okay. So as Mark said, there's the session ID. So please give your feedback. And thank you very much, Mark, for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Angie. And yeah, if anyone has anything, just reach out to me directly through my email and I'll be happy to help.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll end it now. Thank you. Bye-bye.